present. Let me try and share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. So just a little bit of what we're going to go through. We'll just get a bit of a brief background of FSRA, because really our innovation mandate stems from how we were set up and our mandate in general. And also from there, we'll talk about how we went about setting up the innovation office and the test and learn environment. Talk to you a little bit about why we are an ideal partner for innovation. I know it seems kind of probably weird or awkward, a regulator being a partner in innovation, but we are really doing things in a new way, and we'll discuss with you how we're doing so. And one of the biggest rocks in our jar, tools in our toolbox, is the test and learn environment, also known as a regulatory sandbox. And I'm gonna go through that so you guys could see how you qualify, how you might be able to apply to it, but also we'll also be talking about how you can reach out to us. We can talk about all the other tools we have to enable innovation, and I'll put up my contact details and we'll take questions at the end. So for now, we like to say that a strong, stable, competitive financial sector starts with responsible innovation. That is basically how we both protect the consumer and enable innovation. But Scott's going to bring us through right now a little bit of background on FSRA and how we went about setting up the innovation office. Scott?
Thanks, Charles. So as Charles mentioned, I'm going to take a few minutes to provide an overview of who we are at FSRA, what our connection is to innovation, and how we approach it. So FSRA, we're an independent regulatory agency that oversees non-securities financial services as well as pensions in Ontario. And I'll get into what that means specifically in terms of the sectors that we regulate on the next slide. But at FSRA, we're a relatively new regulator. We were launched in June of 2019 as an amalgam of a couple of different regulators that previously existed in Ontario, the Financial Services Commission of Ontario and the Deposit Insurance Corporation of Ontario. And as Charles mentioned, unlike some other regulators that you might come across, supporting innovation is a foundational part of our mandate as a regulator. So as you'll see on the slide, one of our statutory objects in our FSRA Act is to foster strong, sustainable, competitive, and innovative financial services sectors. And so how do we internalize or demonstrate that really foundational commitment, given that we're balancing that statutory object with other statutory objects? So the first is we consider ourselves a progressive regulator. So we're empowering businesses by fostering innovation, while at the same time working to protect consumers and the consumer interest. We're an innovation champion and driver. We have an innovation office that Charles and I are members of, and I'll talk a little bit more about later. We have a set of regulatory tools to support innovation directly, and those are enabled through exemptive authority granted to our CEO, for example, or through other discretionary powers or legal tools. We're also outcomes focused. So we're a principles-based regulator. We're not prescriptive in how we ask regulated entities to meet their legislative requirements, but instead we set out the outcomes that we want to see achieved and allow regulated entities to tell us how they're going to get there in a safe manner for the consumers. So really the main takeaway here is that innovation is a foundational part of FSRA's mandate. We do have some tools, and we're going to get into that a little later on how we can support innovation in Ontario. And we're always eager to have an open dialogue with innovators like yourselves to identify opportunities and bring those to the forefront. So if we could go to the next slide, Charles. As I alluded to earlier, this slide really sets out at a high level the scope of our regulatory authority when it comes to the specific sectors that we regulate. I'm not going to go through this in much detail, but it includes a broad range, as you can see, of financial services sectors like property and casualty insurance, life and health insurance, credit unions, and pensions. As I mentioned, this scope was formed from a combination of those pre-existing regulators to create FSRA. And it also includes both prudential supervision and market conduct functions. So if we move to the next slide, so previously I talked a little bit about how we internalize the concept of innovation at FSRA. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the steps we've been taking to support innovation so far. To reiterate, as a regulator, we are focused on responsible innovation. So we want to be encouraging innovation, supporting new ideas, while also managing the risk that any risk to consumers and members of our regulated sectors. So from an organizational perspective, like I mentioned, we've established an innovation office. Again, Charles and I are a couple of members of that team. And really the goals of that office are within FSRA to promote innovative thinking across the organization. And then externally to work with innovators to help them develop and introduce new ideas into the marketplace while maintaining consumer protection. So at the Innovation Office, we're really all about collaboration. We want to learn and engage with new ideas early. We also want to ensure that we're working together with innovators to manage any potential risks early and avoid consumer harm down the road. In terms of the actions that we've been taking, you can see those on the slide here. We launched an innovation framework, which is a pretty detailed document that goes into our strategy, our guiding principles, and our long-term vision for how we want to be supporting and guiding innovation in Ontario's financial services sector. If you're interested to learn more about sort of that vision and guiding principles, you can find that document on our website. As I mentioned, there's a lot more detail in there. We've also established a regulatory sandbox, what we call the test and learn environment, to encourage real-time experimentation of new ideas with safeguards in place. And Charles is going to get into that a little later in the presentation. And finally, we've been doing a lot of engagement. So taking advantage of opportunities like these to build awareness of FSRA, our innovation mandate, but more importantly, to hear from people and organizations like yourselves about your innovative ideas, barriers you might be facing, or opportunities that you see for innovation in the financial services space. So with that, I'll pass it back to Charles to walk through the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Scott. So what we really like to, just trying to, oh, there we go. What I'd like to talk about now is why FSRA can be your ideal innovation partner. As I said, this may seem a little strange that a regulator is actually trying to enable innovation, not only that, but partner with you on a innovation journey. And really has to do with what we're able to do with the tools we have available to us. So one of the reasons, as I'll get into the test and learn environment, is we can provide a unique opportunity to test your products in the real world. One of the reasons we also encourage people to come to us regardless is we can provide regulatory certainty. We feel this is critical for innovators. So FSRA can help innovators figure out a clear path to approval, reduce risks or costs of non-compliance or anything like that. And really, it starts with the conversation by reaching out to us. We have the authority to grant regulatory exemptions for testing purposes, which I'll get into with the test and learn environment. Also, if you reach out and talk to us, we have access to some of the best experts on our team and can easily connect innovators to the right sources for knowledge and advice. At the Innovation Office, we really serve as an innovation coordinator between everyone at FSRA and also with people we're meeting in the innovation community. What we try and do is we will try and proactively identify pain points and pursue opportunities to develop more innovation-friendly regulatory approaches. So in other words, if our current regulatory regime or framework is not up to date, or if one doesn't exist, we will work with you through our tools or through the test and learn to try and update our regulatory framework. And really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to be the best partner to point you in the right direction. If we're not the right partner for that, then we will try and point you in the right way. With that being said, I would like to talk right now a little bit about our test and learn environment. Which I said it's one of the biggest tools in our sandbox. It's in our toolbox. Uh, it's what's commonly known as a regulatory sandbox, and in short, we call it a TLE, test and learn environment. It's a staging ground for financial services companies can test new approaches, products, and services in a controlled and closely monitored environment. At a high level, what the test and learn is that we're asking companies or entities to come to us with really innovative ideas. Right now, we're trying to encourage experimentation at FSRA. What we say is you push the boundaries, we bring in the guardrails. And really what it is, it's a customized safe space for testing anything against what is a regulatory barrier. It's a staging ground for new products, services, and a monitored environment over a specific duration of time. And what you get in this is real-time review, insights, and feedback over the duration of the test, because basically as part of the test, the entity or company that's part of the test submits data to FSRA, and we talk about whether it's meeting its hypothesis, or whether it's meeting consumer safety metrics, or whatever is in a testing plan. And really what it does, it validates our product and, as I said earlier, helps us enhance our regulations. For innovators, really it helps you reduce the risk of financial penalties, non-compliance, litigation, or damage to reputation. And for the industry as a whole, we looked at the sector as a whole as well. As I've mentioned a few times, it helps us modernize regulations. So you might ask, how is this beneficial for me? And this is a little bit of how the TLE is beneficial for you, but also how working with FSRA and the Innovation Office. Really what it does, the test and learn, is it provides access to low risk testing environment. It's an opportunity for early detection of flaws. As I said, the testing is really data driven, so you'll know if something doesn't work out like it's supposed to when you have a product out in market and whatnot. Above all, it's an open and clear dialogue with the regulator to make sure things can be on side when you go to market. And it's reduced costs associated with navigating regulatory landscape, because we're here available trying to make that coordination and connections. And it's a lower cost route to market because you don't have to worry so much about regulatory uncertainty. Now, we might be asking, does this apply to me and how do I apply to it? And really, when you boil it down, how to apply for our test and learn environment, it's these 4 aspects. You need a market-ready product. We're not an accelerator or incubator. That it has to be a market-ready product, service, technology, or business model, and it has to be applicable to the sectors that Scott mentioned. You don't need to be currently regulated by FSRA, but we can allow non-regulated entities into the test and learn, but obviously you have to be connected to a regulated sector and possibly a path to being a regulated entity. You have to identify a clearly defined objective on how your innovation will have a positive impact on the sector and both consumers. So that's, in other words, saying what you plan on testing and what the impact would be. So it's a clearly defined objective and hypothesis. Identify what the regulatory barrier is. If it's under FSRA's authority, we would be able to exempt you from that barrier for a time limited span. And also the last requirement is your proposed solution to that regulatory barrier. And at the end of the day, that's what the test is trying to prove, is that this regulatory barrier actually has a way of still conducting its purpose, but in a safe way. And also what we'll do is, if a successful test and learn is there, we will either adjust that regulatory barrier, or as I said, if one doesn't exist, we'll create one that is safe for everyone involved. What I want to do right now is just kind of show a little bit of a case study of our first successful TLE application. We've actually had 2, but if you do dive into the innovation framework, you'll see we have 2 ways of establishing innovation opportunities. One is from the inside out, where we basically consult with our experts within FSRA and we call for applications for the test and learn environment. We've one out there now for territorial ratings for auto insurance. Or there's the outside in, which is more so this type of experience we're having right now at this presentation, where startups, companies, anyone comes up to us with an idea, and we try and work out what's the best way we could possibly use our regulatory tools for that idea. And it all starts with a conversation, and that's kind of what I want to drive home with this direct access model. So the direct access model was our first successful test and learn environment. It was an insurance company that proposed a novel way to distribute commercial insurance products, which was not currently allowed under legislation as is, except it allowed our CEO to have this discretion to allow it to happen if they met certain metrics or certain benchmarks. But really what it did is start a conversation about what the product was, what the novel new model was, how it would be done, how it would apply to our regulatory barrier. But it was really a conversation about what are the sector considerations for the sector as a whole to make sure it's healthy. What are the consumer protections? What's the benefits to consumers? And then how will you prove that? And that's really just putting together a plan together of how you approve with data and evidence and whatever means possible. As Scott said, we're looking for the outcome. We kind of don't really look at how you get there, except we'll discuss and have a little bit of a conversation, the best way to do it in a collaborative way. So what's the next steps? Let's book a meeting. If you have an idea, if you have any questions, if you have any innovation opportunity or product that you think might be applied to the test and learn, or that any of our innovation tools, and I will say our other tools are also available on our website, aside from the test and learn, then please reach out to us and I will put contact information for Scott and I here if you ever want to reach out to us to talk about any innovative product approach, opportunity, idea, and whatnot, so we could help enable it and make sure there's no regulatory barriers in the way in a consumer-friendly manner. And with that being said, we're at the end of our presentation and happy to take any questions.
Yep, so just raise your hand if you have questions or just put it in the chat function. Go ahead, Akil.
Hi, Charles. Nice to see you again. I know I owe you an email. I will follow up with you. Quick question here. Could you please give me any kind of case study that you guys work on, not confidential matters, but something like kind of an understanding what scale of operations or where the area that you work on, if it's specifically in the life and health insurance side, if you have anything?
Any examples are you asking for?
Yeah, examples, yes. Yeah.
In the life and health of using test and learn?
Yes.
Well, really, I can't think of any specific examples this time. I can actually take that back and have a conversation with you. But really, for example, in life and health area, we've had some people like approach us to ask about licensing requirements or anything like that. And what we're able to do is point out some certainty as to the direction they have to go to eventually be able to work with us on their innovative product and whatnot. But it all started with them reaching out to us, and we made sure they had some clarity of what they would have to do to get licensed and whatnot, and then enter the test and learn. But it's not always kind of that roundabout way. What it was is we took the question and then made sure we found the right avenue to answer it. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Do you have any other,
Charles.
sorry, just a follow-up question. Do you have anything comes up around the consumer protection or fair treatment of consumers in that area that came up?
we have a whole consumer office that is always looking at consumer protection and all those aspects. As Scott mentioned, everything we do has to have that sort of aspect in it. And one of the big things of FSRA coming together is we weren't just a regulator that made sure your company was prudentially safe. We made sure that there had to be a consumer, both protection, education, and focus in that area. So really, we have a whole consumer office there that here. that also handles that we work closely with to make sure that any product is adhering to any consumer protections, and also the market conduct side.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from our audience members? Just raise your hand or use the chat function. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to think about it, and then we can wrap up this session. Okay, so we will be sharing this recording with you all. We have the emails for Charles and Scott over here on the screen. So if you guys do have some follow-up questions, you can go ahead and email them there. We will take a quick picture before we wrap up this session. So if you guys can just turn on your cameras if you feel comfortable, that'd be great. Thank you. I see the cameras turning on. Just gonna wait a couple moments for everybody else. Okay. Okay. So, oh, we have a couple more people turning their cameras on. That's good. Okay. So if everybody could just smile at their screen for a couple seconds while I screenshot, that'd be great. Okay, great. I got the picture. That's great. So I just want to say thank you so much, Charles and Scott, for a wonderful session. We definitely learned a lot from you guys, and we're grateful for you taking the time to be here with us today. And of course, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. We're so happy to have shared space with you on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Bye.
Take
Thank you.
care.